Short story by Paul McCann, Lucky to Be Alive. Lying on the corner was a dirty, unshaven man with a bottle of vodka in his hand. As people stepped over him, he hurled abuse at them. He seemed a bit upset, he seemed a bit psychotic, he seemed manic. He got to his feet and looked at me. I turned away and looked into the shop window and pretended not to see him. London nightlight sparkled in the shop window's reflection, and I wished I was anywhere else instead of a doorway with the noise of the traffic thundering through my ears. I'd been walking around the city most of the day, and now as the streets were not so busy, it was time now to settle down and Regent Street doorway. As I rolled myself into a ball, I heard the sound of his feet shuffling across towards me. It made me feel uneasy. I felt his breath in my neck, and I found it very hard to push him away. As I turned around, he said, "Hi, hello, having gov?" Then he poured some vodka down his throat and offered me a drink. I resisted at first until he convinced me to have a drink. I took a drink from the bottle and said, "Yeah, I know having. It's a long way from here, though." The vodka made me feel warm and safe. I felt a little relieved. "Follow me," he said as he crossed the road and led me to a TV rental place. In the shop window were some TV sets that had been left switched on. He sat down and invited me to join him. He handed me another drink from his bottle. I smiled and said, "Are you going to heaven?" He smiled and walked over to a back alleyway. In a few moments he returned with a few blankets and said, "Here, take these." All of a sudden his appearance changed. His face seemed kind. There was something warm and friendly about him, and I said, "You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were a little dangerous looking. Please forgive me for reading you wrong." "Peace," he said. Suddenly I felt tired, and I lay down in the doorway with a blanket around me. It was like I had died and gone to heaven. I slept soundly most of the night in a state of unconsciousness. And when I woke in the morning, the TV sets were still on, and the stranger handed me a warm cup of tea. I sat up and I drank it down, and he spoke. "First thing is we have to get you some decent clothes. There's a place I know who can help. They're a rich community who have a church near Elephant Castle, so we'll head there today." "Thanks," I said. "No problem. Hey, we're going to heaven, aren't we?" "Yes, my friend. We'll be playing with the stars one day, right?" He laughed, and his voice changed. I couldn't understand what he was saying. His language was strange, but his voice made me feel safe and happy. I felt a pair of hands lift me up from the ground. Two men put me inside the back of an ambulance. One of them said, "He's got a pulse." And the other one said, "I thought he was dead." Some people are just lucky, I guess. Just before the doors of the ambulance were closed, I caught the sight of a man at the door. He reached out his hand and waved goodbye. Then he took out a comb and ran it through his beard, and he disappeared right before my eyes. One of the paramedics sat beside me in the back all the way to the hospital. Before we arrived, he handed me a card with a prayer on it, and it said, "Say this every day and you will be okay." I took the paper key. I took the prayer, put it in my pocket, and asked him what had happened. "We found you lying on the ground near the front door of a church with no pulse. Your lips were turning blue. We did all we could, almost giving up on you, and suddenly you come round. You're very lucky." I nodded, and he continued, "Yeah, it was a very cold night. It looked as if you'd suffered a hypothermia. We got a call from someone who'd found you, and, well, that's the rest of the story I can tell you." From inside the ambulance, I watched red telephone boxes pass by. And I thought if only I could call the person who made the call for me. I didn't know who he was. I saw street signs with the words Borough of London and wondered if heaven had streets with signs. I looked at the world for a moment through different perspective. There were rubbish bins and seats and bridges and buildings, and everything was making a lot of sense. I realised that my life had been given back to me. The next thing I remember was being taken from the ambulance into the hospital. And then in the hospital I was taken to a lift, and in the lift there was another trolley bed with a man who had his head covered. One of the doctors there in the lift said, this one was killed in a car accident tonight. I know the place where the car crashed. I drive that way every night. As the lift door opened up, I saw that man again. He stood there and he was combing his beard. He placed his hand on the dead man's shoulders. My trolley was wheeled into a ward and the other trolley went towards another part of the hospital. I was given a set of pyjamas and put into a bed. I asked for that little prayer card, that little paper key I called it, that I'd put in my pocket. And before I went to sleep, I remembered the prayer. And I said that little prayer. And to my surprise, the face of the man on the prayer card was exactly the same as the man I had seen earlier on combing his beard. That night, I became a Christian. Some people who know me now say I had come back. Maybe there was something here for me still to do. I thank God every day for my life, and I know in my heart that someday I will be going to heaven. Now I work with a group of people who provide free cups of soup for the homeless around London. I could never have imagined there were so many people out there on park benches and in doorways until the day I started to help out and feed and care for them. Suddenly I discovered heaven is also in the here and the now. It doesn't take too long, and then we will be there forever. The end.